Ask a lot of questions that start with what and how. Ask those powerful questions that don't leave the witness. You will be amazed at the creativity of people and at how much they know that you don't when you ask them what and how questions. It really opens up the possibilities.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, it's time for another episode with Team Amplifier, and this is Chris Leonard. Can't wait for you all to get to know Chris and what he's got to say today, and the conversation that we're going to have. Chris builds high-performing teams and around complex problems, not just any problem, but complex problems. And he's an avid musician and loves the outdoors so much that he's now the new board chair for the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps. Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Byron. I came to Nashville in 2006, and I came here like so many other people to be a musician, and I spent all of my 20s on the road as an audio engineer, learning the art of collaboration in the setting where you got to ship your product every night and you're sleeping on a moving bus going 70 miles an hour with your team members. That experience on the road and in the studio set me up really well to building teams when I became a project manager, then a scrum master, then an agile coach, then a consultant, and then branched out on my own and started my business, No Impediments. It's really helped me get people to get out of their own way and help them find their own way to where they want to be. Both in my work as a team coach, helping teams figure out what they're going to do best, make sure they're getting to the fastest path to value, and increase their quality of life along the way, or whether I'm helping a small business owner turn a successful business into a business that is part of a successful life. That's my passion. It's
awesome.
Taking the art of collaboration and using it to increase human flourishing, like you love to talk about here.
Yeah, man, you're in the right place because that's what we're going to talk about today. So you have some history in the music industry in Nashville. And I guess if you've spent any time in Nashville, who doesn't, right? Everybody seems to be working in the music industry in this area. But that reminds me of my years on the road. I actually had to come off the road because I got like eating out every meal and going to bed really, really late in a hotel and getting up really early in the morning for a flight out and all the hard hours and setting up. And then you're tearing down after a show, and then it's another meal out. And you can put it in your rider all you want, that you want a healthy meal and you want healthy snacks, but they will always inevitably take you to the only place that's open in the podunk town that you're in. Sorry, I shouldn't get on a soapbox, but
yeah, totally. It's actually, I feel that off the road was a different moment. This might be interesting to talk about with your audience. I was playing a show, big shed show in the summer, and I was talking to an engineer who was with the headliner, and he was where I wanted to be. He had done the long climb into the middle class that so many people on the road do, which if you're in that industry and you have gotten yourself into a comfortable middle class lifestyle, that's about as much made it as you can be as a roadie, right? But you don't get rich being a roadie, but you can have a comfortable life like most tech professionals take for granted. And he did. He'd gotten there and his life sucked. He was in his 50s and he hadn't spoken to most of his children in years. He was never around for their most formative moments growing up. His health was a wreck because he'd gone without health care for so much of his life. He still didn't own his own home. He didn't have any plan for retirement, even though he had finally achieved what looked until that moment to me like success. His life was not a life that I wanted. And that's when I thought, I have played the venues I most wanted to play, and I have had some absolutely transcendent moments doing music on the road, and I have made lifelong friendships doing this, and I have loved every minute of it. And if I quit now, I will go out on such a high note that I will never feel like I wasted a single year of the time I was doing this, and like I crossed off 90% of my bucket list. But I also have all these other skills I can go use in my life. And if I go use those skills now, there's still time to build a family and build wealth and do all the other things that life can offer you besides this.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm really glad I did it. And 9/10 of the time, I don't look back.
Yeah. Yeah. And you learn some really good like travel skills. So now when I travel, I don't feel nervous or anxious. I know exactly where to go and what to do because I've been in this airport or I've been on this highway so many times. So anyway, lots of good memories. Good memories. Thank you for bringing those memories back up.
Happy to, man.
So why don't you bless us a little bit more? What's a book that you've been reading lately that made an impact on you?
It's not a book that's really related to our professional conversation together.
Totally
fine. I actually don't read a lot of fiction, but I just reread East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I read that book for the first time at the age of 22 when I was just a young kid going into the music industry and didn't know anything about life. I reread it at the age of 42 with a 2-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy. And tell you what, as a father of brothers, reading that sort of double Cain and Abel allegory hits in a whole different way, buddy. Especially having some experience in life. That is a book that is full of the scars of living. And it hit me in a whole new way. And it helped me think about how I show up with people, what sorts of favoritism or lack of favoritism have shaped me in the world, and how I can be just a more equitable presence in every room that I walk in. It's one of the things that kind of left me with.
All right. I'd say that's very relevant to us. I mean, eventually,
it's not exactly the lean startup,
especially on this
like
podcast. No, but eventually we do enough episodes, and we're going to mention all the books out there already, and we're going to have to start looking outside of our own little group, and I mean, might as well start now. I like that idea. In fact, I'll go ahead and add that to my book list and start reading.
Because I want to. East of Eden's a classic, man. You gotta get to that one eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be like Chris Leonard when I grow up. So I'm gonna go ahead and read that, and kind of that'll fit my my fanboy motif perfectly.
Awesome. Happy to impart a little wisdom, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's confession time though. So I might be a fan, but I know you're not perfect. So
must be Father
see about what's the dark side. It's the dark side of Chris Leonard, everybody.
Yep,
so step into my confession booth here. Just imagine a little creaking noise in the background. What's an embarrassing mistake, Chris, that you've made as a tech leader? Just lay it on us.
Yep. I spent an hour.
Try not to get fired, Bo. Like, try not to get fired.
Yeah, totally.
With whatever it is.
This skeleton's well out of the closet anyway. I've shared this one a lot of times. So
cool.
I spent this 1 hour of my life listening to a team deliberate. And I mean, I talk about this topic a lot because one of my talks is about the cost of intervention and weighing the cost of intervention carefully and fighting our own inner micromanager. And there was a day that I blew it. I listened to this team for over an hour. And I think the discussion really boiled down to, should we do a FIFO queue or an API for whatever this thing is they were building? They couldn't decide on the sort of basic architectural question behind it. And there were merits to both sides. And I didn't get the underlying context. I mean, I was following the technical conversation as well as I could, but what I missed was what the different people were learning from it. What I missed was all the rich business context they were getting as a result of having the conversation. I missed all that. And I intervened, like I often did as a coach, and said, guys, you've been discussing this for an hour now. You could have been halfway done with either of these solutions by now if you had spent this hour mobbing the code out. And they sort of dismissively just didn't address my comment and then continued their conversation. And so I pretty much knew immediately, either I had stepped in it or they didn't like me or they just really didn't want to hear it. One or the other. All three of those kind of run together when you're a coach sometimes. Here's what I realized. I talked to the team lead the next day and he said, that was weird, dude. Here's what was really going on. This person was just learning what both an API and a FIFO queue were because she's junior and she has done a lot of cool stuff in her portfolio, but neither of these are ways of building things she'd ever encountered before. Also, most of them didn't know the business context, and I was using this conversation as a way of teaching them more about the business context because they weren't going to ask questions if I just addressed it head on. And this was a great way to get them to engage. And third, we are still forming as a team, And this was a great chance for us to just get good at deliberating together. That was the point of that hour, and you nearly derailed it, man. So I say all this there's a thing I think you said you were going to ask me about, and I'll share one of my answers to that question later and save another one, and give you one of them now. One of the answers to that question is, this is a tactical thing we can all keep in mind. I call it my 5-minute rule. When I'm watching a team as a leader and I'm watching them deliberate, and I am certain that I already know the answer that they're seeking, and that I need to intervene for the good of the team, for the good of the company, for the good of the project, the customer, whatever, that it is time somebody said something and stopped this. I tell myself 5 minutes, wait 5 minutes before saying that thing. And if in that 5 minutes, I learn something that materially influences my judgment of the situation and changes it from what I think it is right now, I need to reset the timer and wait another 5 minutes. And another 5 minutes. And you know what? If I follow the 5-minute rule, I end up speaking up a lot less. And so I've started doing that lately. And so I intervene a lot less when I am an observer with a team that seems to know what they're doing, where I am not wearing the facilitation hat that day, and I'm not wearing any of the builder hats that day. And I recommend that to anybody who's in a leading, supporting, coaching role with teams.
Okay, well, that's it. We're good.
5-minute rule. See you later, man.
5 minute. All right. Thanks, Chris, for your time. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, man. Shortest episode ever. You can pack in more ads this way.
Okay, so let's actually unpack this a little bit more.
Sure.
So the thing that we're wanting to talk about today is teaching our team to become wayfinders.
Yeah.
So there is so much about that 5-minute rule that is facilitating the process of teaching them to be wayfinders. But let's figure out what this all means. Let's unpack the concept in the first place.
Yeah, man.
So what do we mean by wayfinders?
To me, a wayfinder is someone who can operate independently and use their judgment from where they sit with the information they have, where they're standing in the jungle, not where you're standing or looking at a map, calling them on the phone, but where they are, to make the right next decision. And you have to presume, if you're going to help someone become a wayfinder, that they have more information than you do, and that they want the right result as much as you do, if not more, and that they're at least as intelligent as you are. If you don't have those three assumptions, you're probably not going to be successful at molding successful teams. And for that matter, like molding a successful family. If I raised my kids without those assumptions, that they're at least as smart as me, that they want to be happy at least as much as I want them to be happy, and that they have more information about what makes them happy than I do, then I am never going to be able to raise them well. And honestly, the same thing goes with the team. So teaching people to be wayfinders is about helping them to express who they are and to make independent judgments better than any one of us could make all by themselves, to teach the collective to be bigger than the sum of its parts.
Now, a lot of people might be like, okay, yeah, I got it. I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and stop listening to the episode now because I'm going to be a wayfinder. But that would actually be missing the point. Like if you take away from this episode that you should go out and be a wayfinder, like you can go out and find the way to do the things, and then you tell your team how to do the things. That's going to save them time, right? That's going to help them get from point A to point B in the shortest way. If I take charge and find the right way, but that's not what we're talking about, is it? We're not talking about becoming wayfinders. I mean, we might be. I think that as tech leaders, that's one reason why we become tech leaders, is because we're probably good at wayfinding at some point.
Yeah.
At coming up with solutions. And then that's how we got promoted. You know, people noticed that and they're like, hey, that guy should go. So, but we're talking about teaching people to be wayfinders. So what's the distinction? Well, or what do I have to do as a wayfinder, as an instinctive wayfinder? What do I have to do to become a teacher?
There's two pretty different mindsets here. When you travel alone, you get to decide how long it takes you to pick out a snack at the gas station. You get to decide how often to pull over, and you get to decide when you're going to go to the bathroom. But if you travel in a group of 8 people, you got to make these decisions collectively, and every stop is going to be a lot slower than if you were doing the same yourself.
Yeah.
But what's the advantage? You can drive through the night. You got somebody to watch your stuff if you got to step away. There's like 10,000 advantages to traveling together. You can go further. I can't drive coast to coast all by myself in 3 days. But if I get me and 4 buddies together, we absolutely can. Even though I know we're going to go slower hour by hour than if I was doing the thing myself. So when I am trying to teach a team how to be Wayfinders, the mindset of teacher versus teacher, coach, servant leader versus just rock star doer is completely different. Take a developer. If you got where you are because you're a rock star at solving any coding problem, any software engineering problem, a big part of the mindset you're going to bring to a team is the mindset of get out of my way and just let me do that. I've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen so many tech leads whose job ostensibly is to build a high performing team, and their number one priority in their day is to get their team out of their hair so they can go do the things that they should be training their team how to do, but don't have the patience to. So the mindset you got to bring instead is, how am I going to model the behavior that I need them to have for them to be able to do this thing? One of the biggest ways, back to my 5-minute rule, that we completely undermine this is we can't sit there and watch people learn. We often will see people struggling. Take the example of a toddler tying their shoes. This one hits home for me. I got a 2-year-old who really wants to put his own shoes on. He really wants to put his own socks on, and increasingly wants to buckle the little Velcro by himself. And if every time I watch him do that and he gets frustrated and gets mad and it's taking a long time, if every time that happens, I step in and do it for him, the little booger's going to be coming to me at 16, 17 years old, needing me to tie his shoes, and he's not going to feel very good about himself either. Yeah, worse still, if I step in every time I see him get frustrated, he's never going to develop the resilience to be comfortable with being frustrated. Well, it works the same way for adults in a professional setting. If every time I see a team struggling for the right answer of, oh crap, how are we going to get this release out the door on time? We promised it by the 16th, and the way we're going, it's going to be the 21st by the time we get done. If I try to just feed them and force feed them the answer every time they come to that, they're not going to learn. I have to be willing to sit there and listen to them deliberate, or better yet, sit there in the silence. Remember, when you see a person or a team silent, processing a piece of information, in that kind of silence on a call that seems to last forever, where every second is minutes and every minute is hours, if you cannot sit with that silence, you're missing the fact that silence is when learning and growth happen. You have to be willing to sit and watch people struggle, because that's when they're growing. The toddler has got to struggle with his shoes for a little while. That's when he's learning it. And so I say all that to say, if you want to teach people how to do this thing well, there's some really uncomfortable moments in which you're going to have to control your most natural impulse to intervene. But growth skill we all got to get to, or people are never going to learn that. And if you're coming from, you got to become
comfortable.
Leading from the front as the rock star developer, it's really hard to make that mindset shift, and you have to decide every single day to do that.
You've got to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, and you've got to I love that. You've got to be aware of the fact that things are happening in their heads, and you got to trust them. Also, you got to trust them to not just be sitting there waiting for somebody else to start talking. You got to trust that your team is going to be sitting there mulling it over and processing. Might even be a good idea to just say something like, okay, I'm going to leave that thought with you all and let you all process just for a minute and let me know when you're ready to move on. Or I don't know what that transition would be, but I've done that before where I just like, look, I know it's going to be some silence right now. I just want to give you all a chance to process.
Yeah, exactly. I have a few ways of handling that. Often when I want a team to really think about something, say like an executive team who's had a really bad week, or is dealing with a really bad piece of news from their board, for instance, and they need to process what they're going to do next. After the long deliberation happens and everyone's gotten a lot off their chest and it feels endless, I will make a statement about what I've heard and put out the 4 or 5 ideas I just heard for what we could possibly do next. And then I will ask everybody to mute and go off camera, or if we're in person, I'll ask everybody to go take a walk by themselves and refill their coffee and come back in 10 minutes And I will usually ask that people be as quiet as they possibly can and do as little as possible mentally during that time. Everyone needs to refresh. This is another thing. This is another one of those places that, like, being a parent has taught me so much about how to be a good leader, because look, there's 3 parts of our brain. You got the lizard brain, the dog brain, and the human brain. The lizard brain is way down in your neck, and it's fight, flight, or freeze. It's just the thing that a lizard does. It's the basest instincts we have. Right above that is like emotions. A dog has emotions. A dog has a personality and feelings. Lizards do not have feelings. Lizards run away, or they stay where they are. They are hungry, or they are satisfied. That's about the limit of their interiority. And then above what a mammal like a dog has, with all their eyebrow twirling and real personality and real, like, recognizable emotions that we can connect to, above that is the capacity for empathy and higher reasoning, the things that make us human, the things that you have to be really on your game to do. When we get in a moment of stress, when we get in a moment of difficulty, of upset, like a child crying, the top layers of our brain shut down. The capacity, you cannot be extremely upset and empathetic at the same time. That is not the way.
Right.
The top layers of the brain shut off. And what you end up with is the brainstem and the emotional areas of the brain doing all the guidance for you. This is why your child cannot listen to. This is why you shouldn't have jumped off the couch when he's holding his head after falling off the couch, right? You need to save the lecture for later. Well, look, emotional control, emotional resilience, calming down the parts of our brain that get triggered and amplified so that we can re-engage and reboot the higher parts of our brain. That's where a lot of the work happens. And that's why, say whether it's an executive team or a rank and file software team that's got to make a hard decision, letting people take a little bit of time, take a few rooted deep breaths and re-engage their minds and reconnect with their body a little bit is everything to making a really good informed decision.
Yeah. So this podcast is all about human flourishing and helping tech leaders to find ways to promote human flourishing in their teams. We're talking about teaching people to become wayfinders, but what does that have to do with human flourishing in the first place? So give me your best spiel about connecting this concept of teaching them to be wayfinders with human flourishing.
Well, mostly you just want to hack at some brush with a machete, right? That's really why we're here. Yeah, exactly. Now, like I think people are built to explore. You can actually hear when Apollo 8 went around the dark side of the moon, one of the last things they said before signing off for that radio silence they had to endure, disconnected from everyone and everything they'd ever known on Earth, was they said that man must explore. And I think that's fundamental to our being. And there's so many things that exploring can be. I'm a musician. And so just exploring what my body can make musical instruments do to realize the things in my imagination is a form of exploration I find infinitely gratifying. Look, but guess what? You know what? I also want to go hike Cinque Terre. I want to go, I want to go to the Himalayas someday. I want to go scuba diving. I want to take a submarine into the Marianas Trench, man. I want to see the extremities of the world. If it was safer, I'd get on a rocket and go to outer space. Not quite ready for that one yet. But someday. So when I talk about wayfinding, it's because there's an impulse in all of us that wants to explore things. It's the same reason I read books, man. It's the same reason that I can't wait to go watch the finale of Severance tonight. Don't spoil it for me either. I got to know how that thing ends because I got to talk to people about it, man. We need to explore. This is why the need for wayfinding is so important to us. It's because as people, this is one of the many ways we work out our meaning in the universe, is to find out what else there is out there and test ourselves against it. And sometimes that test, for me, is getting up and keeping 2 kids alive for one more day. But sometimes that test can take a whole different form. Professionally, it might be helping a small business owner make their first $1 million, or helping a nonprofit stay alive in this changing time when every nonprofit in the country is losing all its funding. Those are all forms of adventure that I find incredibly gratifying. So I can't wait to do more of it every day.
Well, when you were talking about what we mean by wayfinders, you also mentioned autonomy and just being able to find your own way from point A to point B instead of having it prescripted, And I think that, I'm sure that Dan Pink really helped us understand this a lot better. Like what is it that drives people? Well, it's part of it is autonomy. And if you have autonomy and you have the ability to find your own way from point A to point B, and you don't go off the road, veering, careening down a cliff, you've got some guardrails to kind of guide you. You can't fail in such a way that everybody dies or that you kill your company or your job. Well, then that's when a human being can really start flourishing. I like what you're talking about too. Like, human beings need to explore. That's how we are wired. And the fact that we in business often tell people to stop exploring is almost a way of turning off the flourishing bit. And human beings and the human beings on our team just kind of start clocking in, and they maybe don't wake up with a desire to go to work that day. They just get up and just autopilot themselves over to work and do their thing, and then they're gone, but they're not flourishing while they're at work.
Yeah,
but I'm convinced that if we
and then get really frustrated that they sit around waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
Yeah, and I'm convinced that if we can allow people to start to explore, like you're saying, explore and become autonomous and become wayfinders in their jobs, and give them proper guardrails so they can make mistakes without taking everybody out in the process, then they will begin to flourish in ways that nobody was ever really expecting. And now the bottom line is improving. Not that that's the goal, but that would be nice.
Yeah. Well, it keeps the paychecks coming, doesn't it? Yeah. So I really think I think this is so core to what we're all here to do. Like, a lot of people get into software or other technical pursuits for economic motivations. I meet so many people, especially in Nashville, who come out of the music industry, and they have gone to this as a second career after music either didn't really work out or didn't work out the way they wanted it to, or just did work out but didn't make them happy. Seen that movie 1,000 times. I could walk out of this and throw a paper airplane into a crowd, and I'd probably hit somebody who had a story like that. What are those people looking for? Well, they're looking for flourishing. They are looking for something that lets them bring their full creative range of possibilities in their heart and their head to bear on human problems that make a difference to people's lives. And again, so often we try to force feed people the answer and just tell them to go do it, and take away all the autonomy involved in it, and take away all the creativity involved in it, to the point where they're just grinding through code. But we're not doing that person any favors, because for one thing, we're teaching that person how to be really, really replaceable by AI if we do that. And second, we're making our job a lot harder, because it's a lot harder to sit around holding somebody's hand than it is to say, this is the problem we are here to solve. We need to solve it, and we need to solve it soon. What's the path that's going to get us there faster? But if this is so good, why aren't more tech leaders doing this? Why aren't they teaching people to be wayfinders? Well, I'll give you an example from playing music. I am really bad at using my pinky on guitar. Any chord that you got to use your pinky on, God forbid a lead line that I got to use my pinky on, I'm going to
Well, it's just easier to like wrap your pinky around the back of the guitar and get that.
So the reason why is muscle memory. When I was learning to play guitar, I eventually figured out my big fat fingers can finger an A chord just by smashing the end of my index finger across 3 strings. And I figured out in so many
I did the same.
I could make chords that were supposed to be used with 4 fingers with only 2 or 3. And I developed this intense muscle memory where I now hold the fretboard like the Queen of England holding a cup of tea with my pinky out. And so every time I have to use that pinky, it has to travel all this distance. Look, a teacher told me this in high school. He said, you got to get over this. Well, guess what, guys? I am 42 and I have not gotten over this yet, because the muscle memory goes that deep. Why am I telling you this? Because muscle memory applies to a lot more things than playing a musical instrument or playing sports. Muscle memory is something we all develop around, especially our professional habits, because guess what, guys? That's what we're doing 8 hours a day. So the way that you're used to doing this thing is the way that you're used to doing this thing. And it takes intense intentionality to change it. So If you're asking me why don't people teach people to be wayfinders, it's because they weren't taught. They had to discover it by accident. And all the programming and teaching that got them where they are in their career has been with some other way of operating. And they don't recognize the behaviors when they're doing them. And they don't have someone holding them accountable to doing things a different way. And so they're not recognizing it and they're not redirecting when it happens. And this is why coaches like me will always have work. It's because people always need help doing this better, whether it's a junior developer learning how to survive on a team, or a CEO learning how to help his company navigate the turbulent waters of 2025, or a small business owner trying to turn that side hustle into something that will make a living for them, into something that will sustain them without them working 80 hours a week. In all those cases, it basically comes back to some of the same habits.
So I'll give you another reason, Chris. See what you think. I don't remember if you came out of, I don't know if you were a developer and you got promoted into leadership. I was. And while I was a developer, I was used to being I don't want to say the smartest person in the room because that sounds really stupid, but I think a lot of times developers, that's how we feel.
Oh yeah.
When we're in a meeting,
never met a developer who didn't think they were the smartest person in the room, but sooner.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and just say it. It's fine. So it's not the truth. It's just what we think. And, you got a bunch of business people and they invited one developer. So that's how the developer is going to think, because in our little world, we happen to know more. Now, they knew more about their world than I did. So there was no intelligence difference. Anyway, that's my disclaimer. But I would be used to that feeling. And then also I remember when I was working for a specific, very large healthcare company that's based out of Nashville that I will not say their name. I had plenty of opportunities. There were no standards around how to write the code back in those days. This was a long time ago. No standards around things. And so I had plenty of opportunities in meetings to implement something. That's how you do it with your keyboard. Yeah. And they would be talking about the thing, and then I would be in my hubris, I'd be over here coding the thing. And then, since it was Visual Studio Code, I would just hit F5 and it would send it out to whatever, to some server. Again, no standards, no processes, anything like that. And I just felt like Superman solving this problem before they even finished the conversation. I'd be like, I just did that. I'm so smart. And so what I'm getting at is, I was so sticking used to being the rock star problem solver that when I got moved into leadership, I had no idea that meant I was supposed to stop being the guy that solves all the problems. I thought, okay, I'm just like an extra more important problem solver now. And I had to learn the hard way that I need to be there to teach people. I need to bring out their brilliance. I need to be there to multiply others instead of being the one who multiplies himself. And so the reason why I, early on as a leader, did not try to teach people to be wayfinders was because, not just because of my habit, but because I had not yet learned that I'm not the one that's supposed to solve the problems. I'm supposed to set up the environment and enable the ones that are going to be the ones that solve the problems.
Absolutely.
I'm used to being the problem solver.
Can I tell you something that brings to mind for me?
Yeah.
Let's talk about toddlers making cookies. Everyone loves that. Toddlers don't know how to make cookies. They know how to make a mess of your kitchen with cookie ingredients, and they may accidentally make a halfway competent cookie dough if they're really, really well guided and redirected in the process. But toddlers love making cookies because they love helping. Mm-hmm. It's not just about the cookies. It's about the feeling of helping. This didn't used to be the case, but people have actually studied the brains of little children a lot more now. There's a lot of research to back this up. And in a child, especially a very young child, like a toddler or a preschooler, the parts of the brain that are activated by helping another person with a menial task are the same parts of the brain that are activated when opening a present. It's the same parts of the brain that are activated when they go rushing into the room on Christmas morning and tearing wrapping paper. The idea that there is a fundamental difference between receiving a gift and helping someone else is something we learn, not something that we are born with. What we are born with is that helping each other is one of the most pleasurable, rewarding gifts we can be given. But this need we have to help other people can be twisted. And one of the forms that it takes is that we love to convince ourselves we were the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And we will frequently come out of an interaction with a bunch of people, like a meeting at work, where we actually screwed up the whole process and railroaded the whole thing. And until someone tells us otherwise, we are patting ourselves on the back for what nice people we were and how much we helped everybody that day. Because the fundamental need to feel like a hero is so deep in us. There's a whole chemical side of the brain to the dopamine release that we get from doing that. Be aware of when you're not just helping to help, but when you're actually chasing a high. A lot of leaders, particularly the ones who go the highest, are actually hooked on the high of feeling like they saved the day and said the smartest thing
Superman
ever heard. Yeah. We're addicted to the high. We're not actually checking in to see if what we did actually helped. It takes discipline to do that. And the discipline doesn't give you the high, unfortunately. But when you go to sleep at night, it still feels good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So as leaders are trying to move into this different paradigm, this way of being, what do we need to watch out for? What are some pitfalls? Like what are tech leaders probably going to overlook when they are trying to teach people to be wayfinders?
Well, I mean, first piece of advice that I'd give you is really practical. It's the old thing that I think it was actually Khrushchev that said it to Reagan, even though Reagan gets credited for it. But it's trust but verify. So you should trust your people, but go look at the code, go look at the board, go see if anybody actually reviewed that thing before they committed it. Make sure the stuff is there. I recently engaged a new client where I discovered pretty early in the engagement that they just hadn't been building unit tests. Nobody had been doing it. Everyone assumed it they had. Honestly, I no sooner would have asked a cruise ship director if their ships had leaks in the hulls before I would have asked the team if they were doing unit tests. But apparently that's the thing I should ask. So yeah, trust but verify. Make sure the obvious due diligence stuff is being done. Do your own homework. Do the reading. That's the first bit of advice I give people. But the more philosophical, the more higher brain stuff I always tell leaders about how to do this stuff well is watch your anxiety. Just as an example, go watch one of the really early Office episodes when it was cringe TV, and it was the whole point was to make you uncomfortable. If you feel like crawling under your desk when there's one of those really awkward meetings, like the sensitivity training meeting in the pilot episode, if you cannot get through that without wanting to just hide somewhere because it's just so darn awkward, there's a pretty good chance that you're also intervening in those moments when a person on your team or the whole team is on the verge of being wayfinders, and you're about to show them what you think is the way, but might actually be the second or third best solution available to them at the time. You've got to learn how to keep your anxiety in check and how to keep your fear in check, and also be in touch with your body enough to know when it's influencing your judgment. I cannot tell you how many times I have pushed a conversation to a premature close because I was hungry or needed to go to the bathroom. You know what? The team would have been way better off if I just gone off camera and excused myself with a BRB and come back 5 minutes later, refreshed and ready to listen. They probably would have figured the thing out without me. So be aware that you don't have all the answers, and that your body may be telling you things that aren't true because its needs aren't being met.
So can you tell me about a time when teaching people to be wayfinders led to some unexpected outcomes?
Oh, that's a good one. I'll tell you a few of my favorites. I was at Pfizer a little while ago. I was helping Pfizer come up with commercials for the COVID vaccine. I was in the COVID vaccine era. It wasn't a tech project. It was a marketing project I was helping them with. And they were really having trouble breaking through on TikTok. There was a whole audience that was on TikTok who was the ideal audience for them to reach because they were on the fence. These were people who might get vaccinated. They didn't care about the people who definitely weren't going to get vaccinated. There's no convincing people who were dug in on that. But they also didn't need to talk to people who definitely were because it didn't matter. They desperately needed to find the maybes, right? And move a bunch of maybes to yeses. And they figured out that a bunch of maybes were on TikTok, but they couldn't figure out what the heck to tell them because a pharmaceutical company is used to just putting a lot of data out there. And boy, were they at pains to put a lot of data out there. If you can put yourself back in 2021, a lot of people wanted Pfizer to show their homework, right? And so everything they came up with for social media, frankly, sucked. That is not the place to show your data, guys. That is not how you move the people who are on TikTok. You know what moves people on TikTok? You know what the best thing they came up with was? Get
stupid
ready.
Dancing.
Yeah, close. They figured out if you had someone do an outfit of the day meme wearing a blue Band-Aid but showing off their outfit other than that actually tended to move a lot of people. You got a lot of suburban moms watching those, and a lot of suburban moms who were super busy schlepping their kids around town were in the maybe pile. They might be able to come up with time, like asking the husband to put the kids to the bed so she could go slide over to Walgreens for a couple hours, but you had to motivate her, and they figured out. But anyway, I say all that to tell you they were stuck in the weeds. I actually thought I had a really great answer. I don't remember what my idea was, but it clearly sucked. But I didn't say my idea. What I said instead was, what are the wacky things we haven't thought of yet? I asked a whole lot of questions that started with how and what. I didn't ask falsifying questions, which is a binary question that leads the witness and says, what if we X, offering an idea.
Yeah.
If I'm a facilitator, a coach, a manager, a leader of any strike, I tried not to do that because I actually don't have as much information as the people on the team do. I don't have the skills that the people on the team do. I don't have their insights. I don't have their context. The best thing I can do is ask those really open-ended what and how questions. And so that was what I did instead. And so by letting them be the Wayfinders and asking the what and how questions, I opened up the possibilities way beyond my own imagination. And the quiet guy in the back of the room who hadn't unmuted the whole meeting, he was the one who said, well, I keep getting outfit of the day memes in my feed for some reason. I think my wife really likes those, and she just got vaccinated last week after saying she was going to do it for 3 months. Why don't we try that? And the idea had legs. They did a bunch, and they got a lot of engagement. And there was no way to find out how many people got blue Band-Aids because of that, but it wasn't nobody.
If there's one thing that tech leaders should start doing tomorrow, or immediately after they get finished listening to this episode, to promote team flourishing, what should they do? Something like incredibly practical, something that I can immediately implement.
I'll give you two. One of them is the one I shared earlier in the conversation, the 5-minute rule.
The 5-minute rule. Yeah, I love that.
If 5 minutes is too excruciatingly long, start small and do a 2-minute rule, okay? But wait before intervening with a team or a person who seems to be probing their way to the right answer, but too slowly for you. That's the first thing. Second, this is one I mentioned in the last response. Ask a lot of questions that start with what and how. Ask those powerful questions that don't lead to witness. You will be amazed at the creativity of people and at how much they know that you don't when you ask them what and how questions. It really opens up the possibilities.
Awesome. So, Chris, how can other people be fans of Chris Leonard? How can they connect with you?
Well, first, you should go find me on LinkedIn. Second, you should book a free consultation with me at noimpediments.com and just shoot the breeze with me. Tell me all about your team and how I can help solve problems for your team. I have never met a team I couldn't speed up by a lot in the first 40 days. Usually I speed teams up by 40% or more. I keep thinking that's an outlandish statement, and then I got to go back and prove it. But gosh, I just looked at the metrics for my last team that I engaged with. It was actually 50% in the first 3 weeks. So I actually usually outperform that. But yeah,
that's awesome.
That's what you should do. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm always giving away free advice there, and then book time with me as soon as you have anything to talk about. noimpediments.com is where you find me, guys.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. We're going to do it again. I can't wait for another discussion on who knows what. We have so many different directions we can go in. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for having me here, Byron. It was a really fun conversation, man.
Awesome. Well, have a great day. Later.
Cheers.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a Team Amplifier.